Vigilante 8 Second Offense would be the next game in the series published by Activision that would see release on the PlayStation, Dreamcast and Nintendo 64, releasing in 1999 and early 2000. They provided many tweaks and visual upgrades compared to that of the original, but these games also took massive inspiration from the likes of the Twisted Metal series way back in the early months and years of the PlayStation's lineup. So the whole premise of the game is based around the 1970s, and this direct sequel takes place 2 years after the first game, but gives you access to new characters, modes, vehicles, more weapons. That also sees you fighting off against aliens and other characters that arrive from the future. So you have a different mix of old school weaponry with alien technology, which is definitely a different take on proceedings, but it definitely does enough to provide a really good experience. Plus, as with all of these games, some of the best aspects definitely has to contribute to the multiplayer features, as these games are a lot of fun to play with your mates. While the game did improve greatly on its original, the PlayStation version in particular faced heavy competition because the fourth Twisted Metal game had been released in and around the same time, and unfortunately because of that, and people were more familiar with the Twisted Metal series, the game just did not sell as high in numbers as it could have done, which is a pity because in many regards, when we look at the Twisted Metal series, right, they're a good series overall, but the first two games are considered the best pretty much ever in terms of vehicular combat, and the Vigilante 8 series could be considered possibly the closest to that. The later Twisted Metal series, while they're decent games in their own right, were never considered as good to the original two games, but they still sold well in high numbers, and mainly due to the fact because it was Twisted Metal, because it was the first series of games to do it well and do it right, so everything that came after it had massive shoes to fill. But in saying that, the game got solid reviews across the board on all consoles it was released on. There were some subtle differences and tweaks regarding each of the versions, but they did present solid experiences for everyone, regardless of the versions that you were playing. So with the modes in question, you didn't get access to all of the tracks or vehicles at the start. You would gradually have to unlock each additional character and asset the further into the game that you get, but which would require you to play through some of the campaign missions, but you would also have to complete various tasks and objectives along the way in order to gain access to some of those features. But some of the cool elements with these games is that the maps are a lot bigger compared to the first game, but you also had loads of hidden areas and accessible features that you could use to ambush your opponents and even hide from attacks, which was always a really cool feature, especially when you look at some of the earlier Twisted Metal games. Was also a load of hidden secret areas that you could use to your advantage, and Vigilante 8 and its sequel is no different in that sense. If you like exploration, which most of us do in these type of games, you will definitely have that here as well. Mind you, if you can avoid attacks from oncoming opponents, you will definitely find a lot of really cool hidden Easter eggs and secrets. But the reality is that there was enough of these games in and around that time that at the point when this game and even the fourth Twisted Metal game was released, vehicular combat games, all the while popular, were starting to decline in overall sales in general. They just weren't as popular as they were around the mid-2000s, and that also contributed to the genre declining as on a whole in many regards. Now, it's not to say that they're bad games, it's just they don't appeal to everybody, in fairness, but they're great multiplayer games, and this one here is a good solid title and definitely among some of the best of its type on the PlayStation. In fairness to it, it really is, but just won't be for everybody, like I said. But if you like car combat games, I would love to know your thoughts on this. What do you think of it overall? Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the Vigilante 8 series, or do you prefer the Twisted Metal series that were released on the PlayStation? It'll be interesting to see what thoughts you have of it, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of car combat or vehicular combat games that were released on the PlayStation, then check out the playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.